Now there's about 7 of us on here, and there'll probably be a couple more jump on here. But for the people that are on here on the Zoom call, if you could please do us a favor, keep your video off and keep yourself muted. If you wanted to communicate with us, do that via the chat. And if you do submit something in the chat, then Hal can make sure that we're aware of that. And I'll also keep an eye on it too. So Ray, get ready to kick off because we're going to start here shortly.
Okay. Well, you're the kickoffery.
Well, I'm just giving you heads up so that when I kick it off, you're ready.
Okay.
I'm waiting for Hal to give confirmation that we're okay. I see us. We are up and live. So welcome everybody to our weekly live training. Tonight is kind of a special edition. We've invited some people to join us on Zoom. And we're going to be doing a case study tonight. Ray bought a house last week. And actually, he didn't even see it until, I think it was Saturday, was the first time he actually physically saw it in person. And so we're gonna dive deep into that deal and talk about it. And we have some upcoming events and things that we'll also talk about as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and hand it over to Ray, and he's going to.
Okay, and you just keep me from going down any rabbit holes, okay? And we talked about this in great detail last night with our coaching students. Sometimes I use those guys so that I can actually work my way through the deal and then just bounce it off of them to see what they think. We do that a lot on the calls where we'll brainstorm a deal. And it's a property that in a really nice neighborhood with a lot of amenities. And we acquired it for, in fact, I'm going to share my screen because I was actually filling out a white screen with my fingertip. And which I got that working. So let's see, how do I share, James? Share screen, okay. And I'm gonna share number 2. Hopefully this will work. Can you see it, James?
Not quite yet, there it goes. Yeah, I can see it now.
So we actually went through the deals, we did the comps, we did everything. We'd already done it because like we said, we closed last week. I didn't actually go in there because I'm partnering with my son and daughter, and my son's been running our rehab stuff for a long time. So he's pretty good at picking up things and not missing things. It is a rule that we really subscribe to, that you have to walk every property, and there's 7 or 8 really serious gotchas that can get you in trouble. And it's a lot of things, if you don't have the experience, it may be something you've just never run into. But there's lots of weird things, like on the back of this property, there's some land erosion. And that's just not something people that buy a lot of houses typically run into. But, you know, we picked it up, and Justin picked it up. And it's not going to affect this property, but it could affect the property. So those are some of the things that we want to talk about, because it's the property backs up to a creek. So, but I guess what we'll do is we'll just go through the numbers and then talk about like different ways to handle this. Before we go through the numbers, I always kind of, I don't think I'm really right on this, but it helps me be in my comfort zone. And I think you can make some really sound arguments about this theory. Is a little not perfect. But I always think about, if I'm going to buy something or borrow money to buy something, what could I sell it like at a quick sale right away, or what they call a fire sale? So what could I sell it for at a fire sale, and would I be able to get my money back and not get in trouble? And if the answer to that is yes, then that gets me in my comfort zone, and I'll usually go with it. And now, in order to know what you can sell something in a fire sale for, you got to be familiar. You got to surround yourself with real estate investors. You got to get in this business and know what investors are looking for. And then you'll see that you'll know what the market is. For example, there's a classic rule, and a lot of people don't really use this rule right now. Hard money lenders like it. It's basically you can buy something at 70 cents on the dollar minus repairs and not get in trouble. And it turns out that that is a really good rule for a fire sale price. If you can buy something at that number, there's almost always a ready, willing, able market to buy it. And the repair part, now that's to fix maybe defects and other things. So if there's a $50,000 defect, well, that's part of the formula. So it's 70% of the after repair value minus repairs or repairing defects. A lot of people are going to get the ARV wrong because they don't know how to do comps, or they're going to get the repairs wrong. So who knows? But that's if I can buy at that number, then I'm going to buy basically anything I can buy. And because I'm familiar with this neighborhood, because it met that criteria, I was in. And I didn't really care too much about exit strategies. Once you've been doing this a long time, you don't really think too much about exit strategies, just because you get it. It's just after 10 or 15 deals, these things are just become second nature to you. And after 300 or 400, they're pretty much second nature for you. So if you look at this, I'm going to write this out as we go, but here's some of the things that we talked about on our call last night. And I want to kind of study these for this particular deal. And so we had like the acquisition, and I'm going to say, if we wholesale it, what can we sell it for? What did we buy it for? What can we hotel it for? What can we fix and flip it for? What can we rent it for? And what can we wrap it? Those are generally going to be the majority of your exit strategies, okay? The buy and hold is going to come under the I would put under buy and hold, I'd put rent and wrapping, okay? Because you're holding on to part of it in the sense that you're holding on to the note. So we're either going to rent it, we're going to wrap it, and that's a buy and hold. And because our main focus is to figure out how to get the deals that we can buy and hold. I mean, we're going to always go after the rehab deals, the fix and flip deals. We're going to go after the wholesale deals, but we really, really want to get the buy and hold, because that's basically how you're going to really get financial freedom. There's guys making $300,000 or $400,000 a year wholesaling. If the market changes, which has happened 3 or 4 times in my career, those guys go out of business every time. So they don't survive the drought. And right now we're not in a drought. In fact, it's the time of all times to be a wholesaler. There's never been a better time as far as how much money a person can make, but it's still, to me, it's not the right way to go. It's wholesale to survive, hotel to survive, but buy and hold to thrive. So, and I'll just show you a picture if I can pull it up quick enough. Let's see. I'm going to try to pull up the picture. No. Okay. So, just show you just so you kind of put a picture with the story. Let's see if this will come up, and you can kind of see it. It's in my file manager right now, but it should come up. And are you seeing it, James?
Yes, I am. It's on your screen is on the screen. So
yeah. So because there's so much stuff running. So this is the house, and you could tell this is like a 70s model house. They actually, one of the things is that houses, we oftentimes say houses have good bones. Well, what makes this house have good bones, besides the fact that structurally it's sound, if you'll notice, they didn't have thermal vinyl windows in the 70s, so it's been updated. The houses didn't have this limestone front, so they updated that. This house was not built with that. And then it looks like the roof is new, and I can tell you the roof is new and the air conditioning is new. So some of the big budget items are done on this house, okay? So this is the house, and we'll just go through it real quick, and it's a better view. This is very common. If you look at this house, you could see where they got the Z flashing, and then they got some siding here. And this siding, what happens with this kind of siding, because it's vertical, the bottom edges get rotten. So what people do is they'll typically cut that off, and then they'll put something on there that's similar to it or even something completely different, but it's better than replacing all the siding. So this is a common thing. We do the same thing. And let's see, that's some more of the pictures of the house. Now, if you look here, if you zoom in, they've done this 2 or 3 times right here. And what's happening is the water's running off this roof, hitting this roof, bouncing back over here, and just slowly but surely rotting it out. So in this house, this is one of the more expensive things we would do with the house. It's not that expensive. We would just cover all this with hardy. We'd kind of clean it up and just cover it with hardy and get rid of this old stuff, because here they use a different kind of material there. It's very hard to get this older material from the 70s. And of course, we'd paint and lighten this house up. So this is, you kind of seen it. And that's another picture. It's gas. And what else to tell you on that picture? Not much. One of the things is in this price range of house, we're looking for amenities. There's not a lot of amenities in this house, except that it's large yards. The amenities really come with this neighborhood. This neighborhood has tennis courts, swimming pool, community centers, gyms. It's got everything. And golf course. So all the schools, all 3 schools, junior, elementary, high school, are all within walking distance. They're literally on the edge of the subdivision, so the kids can walk through the subdivision, walk on the playground, and get into the school. It's just highly desirable. Now, this is the kitchen, and this is where it starts going south. But this is all, structurally, it's here, but it's not usable. Like if you look at this laminate and stuff, this is wear patterns. It's just not, this is not what's done today when you update a house. So that's kind of, now you have the pictures in your mind. And let's go back to my little drawing, my fingertip drawing. So our acquisition price on this house, in fact, we closed on this house already, it was $210K. Okay, so now what we want to do is figure out what is the top value for this house. And if so, in the fix and flip, we did the comps. There's basically, when you're doing comps, there's 3 or 4 levels you want to look at. One of the levels you want to look at is like, well, there's brackets, like is the house, show me the comps of the houses not fixed up. Show me the comps of the houses fixed up. Show me the comps of the houses that are fixed up beyond fixed up. In other words, they take them down to the studs, they change out the plumbing, they change out the electrical. It's a high end. So in those houses most of these houses aren't fixed. Very few of these houses are fixed up on that level. They're fixed up one bracket below that, which in other words, got some upgrades, and cosmetically they're perfect. They're putting granite in, which nowadays you can't even consider granite an upgrade. It's almost just standard operating procedure. But in that houses, the ranges, not really fixed up, but just kind of cleaned up, not like what we just saw, but cleaned and painted, is around $350K. If it's fixed up really nice where you do the upgrades and stuff, then that's a different price point. And this neighborhood has both price points on a lot of them, a lot of comps. Then that's typically around $450K. Okay. So this house, the top end on this house is $450K. And the days on market are less than 10 days on market. So we're acquiring it at $210, it's $450. Now, if we were to wholesale this, and we have an offer on it right now of $270K. And we've already closed on it, but we haven't touched it. Okay, so we kind of have a tentative offer on that at $270. So this, remember what makes me in my comfort zone is the fix and flip. So if we're going to do the fix and flip, by the way, James, is this readable?
What are you talking about?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so we're going to fix and flip. We basically have to figure out how to get from 210 to 450. And I didn't put repairs in here, so let me put it in here. And remember, I said there's 2 sales price points, and this is where you got to actually think about it. So there's 2 price points. Anyway, that's supposed to be repairs. To get to the 350K, and this is kind of a ballpark, but I've probably done 1,000 rehabs. We've never stopped rehabbing. To get to the 350, we're probably looking at about 45 to 50K. Remember, in this house, We have new roof, new air conditioner, new windows, new some upgrades in the way of limestone. So this house has some huge advantages going into it. So to get to 350, we would be probably at probably 40 to 50K. So we'll just put 45 here to get to 450. And I know this because we actually looked at the pictures of the comps that did the 450. There we would probably be about 70K. Okay, we'd go in and redo some of the wiring. It's amazing on a house that doesn't have that. If we didn't have that roof, we would add 15K. The windows, we would add 10K to that 70K. The AC, we would probably add about 10K. So our numbers could have been real easy on this 70, 15. So you're 25, 35, 105K. But because all of those items are handled, we don't have to worry about those. So this deal is really looking good. So, but even at 105, if we were going to 210 and then 105, it probably still would be worthwhile to fix up. Now rents, we did the comps on this. In that neighborhood, the rents are $2,300. We did this last night. And I didn't even do it to buy it. When we bought it, I just know that when you have a $450,000 house in our market, you don't normally rent it. So it wasn't real high on my radar of things to do, but the rents were $2,300 to $2,700. Okay. And so then the wrap was actually very exciting because if we were to say, go out there and refinance this, like buy it and refinance it, we might be able to get 4% money. Now we'll show this, like we're going to be doing a 2-day class. I think it's this weekend, and we'll show you how we do this math here. But if our underlying cost was 4%, there's a good chance we could wrap this house at 6% to 7%. Because of the price point, it's kind of hard to get above 6 or 7%. But there are people that'll pay that. And so our wrap, we figured out, and I don't, without going through all the numbers, if I remember right, our cash flow doing a wrap was about $800 per month. Okay. And then our repairs, you saw our repairs, 45 to 70K. Uh-oh, what happened? Okay. I'm sorry, James, were you saying something?
Yeah, I was gonna try to interrupt you for a second, ask you a quick question. I know it does depend on which exit strategy you decide to go with and which rehab budget and how deep you want to rehab it. But what do you suspect is going to be the rehab time on it? You know, like how long will it take you to do the rehab?
On this house, you can knock this one out in 30 days if you want to. Expect 30 to 45 days. Yeah, because it's like we bought it last week. We haven't even started working on it. We're working on other stuff. So if you're ready to, a lot of people, they literally jump into it the next day. And there's no reason not to unless you've got a lot going on. If you've got a lot going on, you kind of start psyching yourself up. And in fact, the seller still has a couple of things they want to take out of the house. So we're just not sweating it. Now, one thing I didn't put in here is I didn't put the hotel number. And the hotel number, I would expect to be 280 to 290. Now that a lot of this is just guessing.
So explain for our audience what wholesaling is.
What wholesaling is? You said wholesaling, James?
Yes.
Okay, so wholesaling, you see, we've got an offer at 270 right now. So we would net 60K minus whatever we put in into it, the closing. Now, that when we acquired it. Now, normal wholesaler will oftentimes not close on it, and they don't have to pay the closing fee. So we would eat the closing fees on our first closing, but we wouldn't eat the closing fees on our second closing because the wholesaler would have to pay the closing fees. So we would say, no, you're paying all the closing fees. And that's very common in wholesaling. Now, wholesaling would be like you go in there, you clean it out, like say it's a hoarder house. Usually it's better to clean it out yourself because you can make it look a lot on about half the hoarder houses that we've taken on, they improve dramatically when you clean them out. Now, sometimes they go the opposite direction because all of a sudden it shows all the damage that you couldn't see when you did it. So, but the hoteling just means you're going to spend anywhere from a few dollars to $5,000 or $7,000. Most wholesalers won't do hoteling because they're not taking title to the property. And that means if they don't take title to property and a title defect shows up before closing, they're subject to lose any of that money they put into it. We've done some repairs before closings occasionally through, I've been buying houses for 38 years. So we've occasionally done that. It's just not something we do frequently. And I think if you got one deal, I'll tell you where we've actually done that before, where our crews are like sitting idle. And we'll throw them in there and then work like the devil to get our closing done. But we don't want our crews to sit idle and then end up going to work for somebody else or getting stuck on another job for 6 weeks and then we don't have access to them. But we normally won't spend money. And so people don't do a lot of hoteling unless they end up closing on it. But let's say, and this house doesn't have these defects, but let's say you were to walk in a house and you had wires hanging out of the ceiling, right? Well, a lot of people see those wires and they think, oh my God, this house is going to burn down or whatever. And it may be something as crazy as they had an amateur homeowner in there moving wire around, or somebody stole the ceiling fan. And those kinds of things are relatively cheap and inexpensive to fix, but yet they carry a big price tag because a lot of people are afraid of those things. And so they think, oh, I'm going to end up getting an electrician in here. It's going to cost me $10,000. Or worse yet, they get an electrician and the electrician starts telling them everything about the house, trying to pad sell them into a big electrical repair job when half the time it's not due. So hoteling means you're going to go in there, you're going to control the scary items or the items that keep people from getting a good sense of what that property looks like. And then it increases the value. They say the most highest return you can get on a property is just cleaning it up. Like imagine a front yard just strewn with all kinds of trash, everything else, trash everywhere. You clean it up, it looks so much better. I mean, you already feel better about the property. So a lot of times think of hoteling too, it's like you're kind of playing with psychology, because if I wholesale, I might only have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 people interested. If I hotel it, even if I don't get more money, what if I have 10 or 15 people want it, right? So my hold time is lower, the desire for it is higher, it becomes maybe a bidding war on it. So hoteling is, and I'm probably talking too much about hoteling, but that's the concept of hoteling. So anyway, are there any questions on this? Or James, you have any questions? I was really pretty impressed with how good writing this out like this kind of covered all the bases. And these are kind of pretty much the general exit strategy. Now, if we're under rent, we would put, there's midterm rentals, there's short-term rentals, there's long-term rentals, there's maybe assisted living, so because we're starting to do Airbnbs, we're looking at the rentals that have the least amount of hassle to put them together, as like with the subdivision, and the highest multiplier that we can have. And typically when we're talking about Airbnbs, we're looking for multipliers of 4, 5, and 6, not 2. Multipliers of 2, it's not worth doing Airbnb. You get a multiplier of 4 or 5. This house didn't have the amenities that Airbnb that gets a multiplier of 4, 5, or 6 would typically have. And because of that, we're not going to consider this for short-term rental. That we're probably not going to consider it for rent, because if you look at your cost of your money, your cash flow is very low and the taxes are relatively high on this property. So this is not something we would normally rent, because as the value of the property goes up, and because in this particular property is in Texas, So the tax rate with HOA is typically around 3%. That just prices most people out of there. We would have a very, very low cash flow if we were in the $2,300 to $2,700 range. We have historically never bought with factoring in appreciation. We don't need appreciation to become independently wealthy and get our financial freedom number. We need the tenant to pay off the property. We need the tax benefits it gets. And on certain price range properties, we can get that. In this property, we can't. So rent was never on the table. Fix and flips on the table. Wholesaling's on the table. Wrapping is on the table. Because appreciation is happening so strongly, last year it was a 20% in this neighborhood. The year before it was over 10%. The predictions are this year it's going to be another 10%. We could make more money on appreciation than we could on our rent. In fact, we'd be lucky to have a cash flow of $300 or $400 a month on this property, and our appreciation could literally be 10 times that. That's weird to think in terms of appreciation being 5 to 10 times more than what your rents would be. So if there's somebody that wants to hold on to a property, maybe not do a over-the-top repair, like this house wouldn't take a lot to make it rent ready if you want to be in that $2,300 range. If you want to be in the $2,700 range, you're going to spend $30,000 or $40,000. To be in the $2,300 range, we'll spend easily $10,000 to $15,000, right? But the house is not falling apart by any means, pretty much mechanically and electrically, everything but cosmetically, it's a pretty sound house. So this is actually a really decent deal. This is much better than what we normally do. But also we're limited because this is not a buy and hold, but we'll probably flip it. The question is, oh, by the way, when we actually did the math, so we actually look at what our holding costs are. We break them down, like what's our cost for the money, what's our cost for utilities, the cost for yard work, our cost buying, our cost selling. We figured that in, and we're somewhere between, based on all these numbers, our fix and flip dollar amount is somewhere between 120 and 140. So we can maybe push this up and get a wholesale fee of, instead of 60K net, maybe go to 70K net, maybe even 80K net. If we can go to 70 or 80K net, then you got to ask yourself, are you better off wholesaling it / hoteling it, or are you better off fixing and flipping? And so it's 70 to 80 versus 120 to 130. And it's really not that easy of a decision, because if I wholesale and hotel it, I'm done. I don't even have to do nothing, right? If I fix and flip it, I've got to live with this thing for the next 4 or 5 months. Plus I get my money now instead of 4 or 5 months later.
Well, I was just fixing to ask you, Ray, what do you put into that decision? You just answered it before I could ask that. So we did have a question come through. Just to recap, what is the multiplier that you should use for short-term rentals?
Well, I'm a student in that game. We're bringing 5 Airbnbs online, and we want to shoot for 4, 5, 6 times as far as multiplier goes. And that's the guys that are really doing a good job. That's what they're doing. And those properties tend to look a certain way. And you've got to spend the money to get them to look that way. And so amenities are real big. Number of beds are real big. Themes are real big. So it's a slightly different equation. So you don't need a lot of beds necessarily, but the uniqueness. So you can get those higher multipliers if it's either really unique or it has a lot of value to people, to the people who are going to end up being your customers. So our goal is to shoot for 4. And at 4, it makes it worthwhile. At 2, it's not worthwhile to me, because my time, I really feel like, and I feel like everybody that's listening to this, everybody's active, their time's just too valuable to deal with all the stuff that has to happen with Airbnb, just to have a multiplier of 2. In fact, I don't even know if 2 is a break even in reality when you consider the amount of time that you have to spend on it, the energy you have to spend on it. We've got a few people working with us. So if it was me that was having to do it, I would not do the Airbnb. I don't care if it's a multiplier 4 or 5, because I want to try to figure out, my goal is to figure out how to find more houses that I can buy and hold. And like these deals are going to come along like this is not a buy and hold for us. You know, if the ARV was 200 or 180 or 250, we'd probably be all over it. But because ARV is 450, it's just not a buy and hold for us.
So can you talk a little bit about, because, you know, the couple of things that we're going to be talking about this weekend in our 2-day workshop is, you know, how and where to find the leads, and then how to put the deals together. Can you talk about how you found this lead and how you actually did put the deal together?
You got to let everybody know that you're buying property, and you a lot of times friends and family will bring deals to you. This was a friend and family deal where this house wasn't working for them. It was 3 times bigger than what they needed. It's not huge by normal standards, but it's about a little bit less than 3,000 square feet. But you know, their family had grown up. The kids weren't at home anymore. And so you just got to reach out to people. You know, that's why we really encourage you to communicate with everybody. Everywhere you go, you're like a billboard, and you got to tell people what you do and how you help solve people's problems. So that's a big thing. We love working with realtors. Realtors bring us deals. We really nurture wholesalers. In fact, after this call, I've got a call with a wholesaler that really doesn't want to be a wholesaler, and we're gonna set up a JV arrangement, which James does that with people that want to partner with us, and we'll do JVs with people. So you just got to make your net as big as you can, and then we spend a lot of time figuring out how to do partnerships so people aren't taking risks, and you got to figure out how to set those partnerships up where it's clear. Like, for example, I'm not going to be a partner with somebody if they've never done a rehab and then they get the final say so on how we spend money, because they don't know how to spend the money yet. They've got to get 10 or 20 of them under their belt. So when you have a partnership, you've got to kind of define who's responsible, who has the final say so, what the exit strategy is going to be. And then you got to deal with people who are honest and ethical and understand the power of developing strong partnerships. But that's another source of deals. I mean, we partner with wholesalers all the time because wholesalers want to go to the next level. And they may not, you know, I probably take rehabbing for granted, but we've never stopped rehabbing. And if you're just starting out, there's so many things that you can do wrong. For example, painting. People think painting is easy. They think it's simple, and it's high-tech stuff. You know, just paint the wrong paint over another paint and watch it fail. Watch your contractor paint something like 4 times, and it looks like crap because he doesn't know what he's doing. So I probably take that a little bit for granted. But if I'm JVing with somebody, you'd be crazy not to use my experience just because we've bought so much and been rehabbing houses the whole time. So you reach out, get deals by being the solution to other people's problems, whether it's foreclosures or whatever. I mean, that's what we're doing, that foreclosure tour, right? People that come to the 2-day deal, they can also, we're just throwing that foreclosure tour in, but we took our super volunteers and some of our students, and they're chasing deals right now. And then we're going to go to the foreclosure auction, and we're going to follow those deals through the foreclosure auction. It's going to be a great learning opportunity for people that don't know how foreclosures work or aren't actively buying it. And it shocks me beyond belief how little people that are spending tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars at a foreclosure sale, and they don't even know basic things like how to verify that the title's good, to verify that there are no other liens against it, to verify that the foreclosure was done properly. And they're throwing out the $50,000, $100,000, and they don't even have a good title after the deal. It's just unbelievable. And so we talk a lot about that with our students because that's where a lot of beginning investors screw up. They think they just go and win the bid and they think they own the house, and they don't realize that they're a second lien holder, or the entity that foreclosed didn't do it properly. I mean, it's not for the casual, but the opportunities are there because people are, there's a lot of houses being sold every day at the foreclosure auction. So we'll be going through that. I think that'll be fun. We're looking forward to that. And James and Milton, you guys are supposed to be helping those guys. Are we on task with that as far as following up on the leads and everything?
Yeah, we are. We did fall a little bit behind, but we're catching back up. So
well, we have when is it February 1st?
Yeah, the auction is February 1st. It's the first Tuesday of every month, and in February and in March it happens to be on the 1st.
Yeah. So that'll be fun. Hopefully we won't have a ton of people going to that because I want to kind of move around and show the people that were with us who the players are, where the deals are, and some of the games that are being played at the foreclosure auction. There's a lot going on, and I don't know everything. A lot of times you learn these tricks after they're done on you. After you're the victim of the trick, you learn it. So there's a lot of interesting things happening there. So how'd you like my little drawing with my finger? That turned out okay. I was hoping Hal would chime in because he's the tech guy.
It is
something coming from Hal.
It is legible. I mean, it looks like a first grader wrote it, but it's legible. So is there any questions, guys? Feel free to leave a comment and ask a question. But Ray, we did have a question come in a few minutes ago that I didn't get a chance to re-ask. Can you give a recap of what your potential profit is going to be if you decide to do a full rehab and flip it?
It's going to be this really boils down.
Also include in there kind of how you came to the number of your net profit as well.
So, well, if we wholesale our hotel, it's just a question of making sure the turkey closes, right? We want to check them out, make sure the money's available, make sure that we qualify them and qualify their source of funding, and then we lock them up. So if we're wholesaling it, we got to treat it just like we got to follow the best practices that you would as a wholesaler, and basically you want to lock them up, verify that the funds are there, make sure that they don't have a lot of contingencies where they can get out of the deal. Make sure we get money from them as a deposit, right? So, right. But if we do that, which is not that hard, by the way, I think it was, James, when you first were a student 8 or 9 years ago, it might've been you or your dad, but they had a really good deal and they put a sign in the front yard and the next door neighbor stole the deal from them. And this is a case of where if you're wholesaling property, you just got to follow best practices. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
What? Yeah. So you remember that? Was it you or your dad that did that deal?
That was actually that was actually another family deal.
Okay.
And it was my dad's deal, and that was in the Heights. And the Heights at that time was a very, very cutthroat area, super competitive. And it was actually the neighbor, one of the neighbors that took that sign down, because they were a lot of what was happening in that area during that time, which I'm guessing was probably about 7 years ago. People were going into that area, and there were pyramid beam houses, and they would tear them down, and then they would rebuild 2 or 3 story condos or 2 or 3 story like shotgun houses. And this particular neighbor did everything he could, and he was actually successful in killing the deal.
Yeah, and what you got to do is just this. There's a lot of lessons you learn by being in this business for a while that people that have been in it for a year just don't know, or 2 years, or even if like a guy's a guru and he hasn't gone through, he wasn't in business before 2007. All he's ever lived in is an up market. So it's not just surviving in the up market; it's surviving in the down market. Best practices in wholesaling rule. There's like 101 rules. One of the rules is you don't put a sign in the front yard if you're wholesaling. Now, we actually closed on this house, but if I was wholesaling this, I wouldn't put a sign in the front yard if I wasn't the owner. But a lot of people would, and they'd get the permission of the seller. But the next thing you know, you've got the whole world knowing exactly where your seller is, and all of a sudden they're negotiating with that seller. And right now, lots of people are. It's always been cutthroat, right? We just don't think it is, but it's cutthroat because if you put your wholesale deal out to say 1,000 people, 5 or 10 of those people are just outright thieves. They'll just steal it from you. If there's any way they can steal it from you, they'll steal it from you, and they'll find out. They'll try to steal it from you. So you've got to put some force fields or some what is the word, Hal? You got to put some curtains or some shields in there to stop those people from getting through to your buyer. Now, if you close on it, they can't do nothing. They're locked out. If you get the seller to give you a deed, they can't do nothing. So we do both. We'll oftentimes get a deed even before we close, or we'll take ownership of it before we close, or we'll send it to our preferred buyers list, people that we know that we trust, right? And so if we're wholesaling it, when I say best practices, we're talking about the things that essentially take the profit out of your pocket and put it in somebody else's pocket. By the way, if you want to have a good read, and I don't know if it's on Audible, but it's, I think, by Robert Ringer. There's a guy who was a real estate broker, and he would constantly get his deals stolen from him by buyers and sellers. In other words, they bring him to the table, he gets the job done, and then he ends up not making his commission. Well, in a sense, isn't that what a wholesaler is doing? And he was so frustrated with that, he came up with some good strategies. And I read this book probably 30 years ago, and it's called Winning Through Intimidation. And he talks about how he manages his risk and keeps other people from stealing his deals. It's not only a phenomenal book, it's humorous, it's funny, and it's short. So it's a great, great book. You owe it to yourself to read that book. I think about that book all the time. It really is part of my psyche, and I learned a lot from it, and it helped me learn how to protect myself early on. And that's, if you're a wholesaler, you owe it to yourself to read that book. Now, so really the only two sets, and I want to answer that question you asked a few minutes ago, our only two strategies, as far as I can tell, is wholesale or hotel, okay, or fix and flip on this particular property. Now, different people have different thoughts on that. Now, when you ask, like, how did we figure out, or first of all, kind of two parts, I thought was your question, is like, how much money can we make if we fix and flip, and how much money can we, or how do we know what that amount of money is? What's the thought process? And by the way, remember I said there were two numbers. So at the 45K, we can get to 350 but it still requires work on it. For another 25K, we can get to 450. So in this particular case, because the demand is real high in the 450 range, it doesn't make sense for us to do the 350, because it's not, once you get set up, you get going, it just doesn't make sense to stay at the 350 mark if we can go to 450, especially when the premium for that, the cost of doing that just is another $25,000, which is a lot. So it might be that it's not your budget, you don't have the money available to do it, but I'm leaning towards, if we fix and flip, I'm leaning towards the 450 range, but this is also an option. Now, how did we figure it out? It's real simple. You know, you look at it's simple, but you got to do it right. You learn how to do comps the right way. Okay. There's no magic formulas, but you can't, it's hard to be really good at comps until you got 1,000 or 2,000 under your belt. So you definitely want to get other people's opinion, but you still want to drive the bus, right? You don't want to leave it up to somebody else. You want them tell you what you think the value is, and then you want them to prove it to you, right? And that's more than them just telling it to you. And we could talk more about that, but getting good at comps is important. This is one of the things we do with our students, because on our coaching calls, we have actually enough time to go through it, look at it, and make sure we agree with them. Because you get this number wrong, you can lose money. Or you might walk away from a deal that you shouldn't walk away from because you got the number wrong. But so once we know that what this number is, then we work backwards, and we'll do things like you subtract the acquisition price. So that's 210. So, and I'll just go through this real quick. So if I subtract 210 for 450, that's 240, right? Is that right? So it's 240. So if we do 240, now I look at my closing costs. If you're a realtor, your closing costs are going to be roughly 6%. If you're not a realtor, your closing costs are going to be 8%. So you multiply 8% times your sales price, and then you get, and that's, I don't know, I did it last night on our coaching call, but it's probably around $35,000 or so, $36,000. So now we subtract that. We subtract our holding time, how long we hold it, and then we subtract our repairs. Our holding time, when we do our holding time, we'll put 5 or 6 different numbers in our holding time. Our holding cost, I say time. Our holding costs are going to be related to utilities, getting the yard mowed, vandalism occasionally, because you'll have things like that happen. So we'll have to throw in a number for that. And then if you think you can do this in 4 months, in my opinion, you should factor in a scenario where somebody is close to buying it and then the loan flakes out at the last minute, right? So that would get you to 4 months, and then the loan flakes out at the last minute, and they do very often. And that's why, like when we put that in our CRM, we have like 50, I think it's either 51 or 53 things that we check on when we're closing if we're doing a retail deal. So that list of those items, we want to stay on top of that, because we don't want this to go to month 5 and not month 6, because it costs $5,000 or $6,000, $10,000. It's too risky. What if the house burns down because of our incompetence? We end up sitting on it for 2 extra months. That's why we spend so much energy qualifying our buyers on the first. I mean, we're not going to take the first offer if the buyer doesn't look good. So if we're fixing and flipping. And so, but I would recommend that if you do a decent rehab, you should be able to turn it around 3 or 4 months, assuming that you don't have problems with the sale. You can never totally 100% predict the outcome when you're doing a new loan and it's another person, because they'll a lot of times bring their lenders who are oftentimes are incompetent. So just plan on that being 6 months, your holding time being 6 months, and then figure your holding costs based on a 6-month time. And you start doing that math, and you're around probably 140 to 140-ish on that deal. So so that's how we came up with a number. We actually plugged in the numbers that we typically will use for that, and then it'll tell us what our net dollars are. And this is before taxes. This is not figuring taxes in. Remember, if you rent or wrap this, there's not a real big tax consequence. And if you wholesale, hotel, fix and flip, there's going to be a tax consequence. It can be quite a bit of money.
You're on a roll tonight, Ray. I was just fixing to ask. Somebody had asked about capital gains taxes. Do you ever factor that into your deals?
Yeah, and that's why I don't want to pay taxes. I want to buy and hold. I mean, with buy and hold, right now we're buying everything we can with my Roth IRA. So at my age, I never have to pay taxes on any of my gain. If you can borrow, when you borrow money and you can use that money that you borrow to maintain your lifestyle or to pay your lifestyle, that borrowed money is not taxable. If you were to do the opposite, which is wholesale it and then get the capital gain, like on a fix and flip, you could pay 30% of that on capital gains. But if you buy and hold it, either through an IRA or 401k, or you buy and hold it and then turn around and then sell it using a 1031 tax deferred exchange, you can go the rest of your life, and your children can go the rest of their life without ever paying taxes on this. And so we don't talk a lot about it on these live streams because it's too much information, and different people are in different places. But if you keep it less than a year and your goal is to turn around and sell it, that's considered inventory, and it's short-term capital gains. So you're paying unemployment, you're paying Social Security, and you're paying taxes at your highest return, at your highest interest, your highest taxable rate. So yeah, we don't like to wholesale or fix and flip, but we do because it's still a lot of money. At the end of the day, you're still going to put a lot of money in the bank. On this deal, you'll put over $100K in your pocket after taxes. It'll be close, but it'll be right around $100K if you go this scenario. So you got to look at the big picture, and you can't figure all this stuff out at once, and you don't need to in today's world. You just got to know what you're doing, what your plan is, and how to optimize it. And so, yeah, we're okay with wholesaling properties. We're okay with fixing and flipping, but we really want to be doing wraps or rent. That's really where we want to be. And we spend a lot of our time. In fact, if I look back in the 38 years I've been buying houses, my biggest regret is I didn't work harder at holding on to the properties in the beginning. There's properties that we've sold literally for peanuts that would be worth $300,000 right now, and we made $7,000 on it. And why? And I could have made not just a $300,000 that would be free and clear now. I would have been making cash flow the whole time. I would have had the depreciation the whole time. It's some of the mistakes we've made, and I think it's what everybody makes. You can't know everything when you start, and you sort of sometimes need a tour guide when you're involved in this business. But the power of this is just unbelievable. What you can do with it is just, I don't know why anybody would do anything else. I remember when I was working for a company, I worked for a corporation for 10 years, and about 5 years into it, I decided I wanted to do something else. So I started doing real estate, and they were forcing us to buy mutual funds, or we could put the money in 4 or 5 different accounts with our retirement. And I researched, I went to the library, when Morningstar or whoever it is, I think now, I don't remember. I learned everything, and I listened to everybody. I read everything. I read the reviews, and I remember investing in the mutual fund that had like a 10-year track record of earning double-digit yields, like 10, 11, 12%. The first year I got into that, they lost money. And it's like, I'm never going to do this again because I don't have any control over that outcome. And stuff like this, I know exactly what, you don't know exactly, but I have control over, like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to move forward? Is this a buy and hold? Is it a good rent property? And or is it not a good rent property? Is better set up for a fix and flip? We have say-so in how we do this, right? And so I love this, and I'm never going to be at the mercy of a 24-year-old millionaire person selling stocks who's driving a $100,000 BMW and doesn't even know what a down market is. I'm never going to be in that place again. You're not going to control. You're not going to get to vote on that, right? I'm going to vote on it, and I'm going to take responsibility. That's what I was talking about, the realtor. If you're bringing a realtor to the table and they're telling you the ARV, you need to trust and verify, because those are the kinds of things that we can't leave up to other people. It's stuff that we have to learn and we have to master. And once you master it, you pretty much got it for life. It's not like you spend the rest of your life figuring out how to do these things.
So we're getting close to the end. We're about to wrap up, but so we'll do one last call for any questions. Ray, can you go back and give like a 1 or 2 minute quick overview and explain what you were talking about a little while ago as far as the closing costs that are factored in when they're, realtor versus not a realtor. And then after that, we're going to talk about a little bit about the 2-day workshop and what to expect this weekend.
So I've been a licensed realtor for like 20 years now. And for the first probably 15 years, I wasn't a licensed realtor. And I realized, it doesn't make sense not to be a licensed realtor as an investor because it gives me access to tools. And I also learned how to do better deals with realtors than I was ever doing by myself. And so when I said that number is 6% if you're a realtor or your partner's a realtor, or it's 8%. So you're in this price range house, you almost always are going to sell this house through a realtor. And the realtors they split the commission. The listing realtor is making 3%. The selling broker is typically making 3%. So if I'm a realtor or if I'm a JV or partner in the deal, we'll normally just charge 1% commission to the partnership because there is overhead, there is cost, and that is a break even for us. So like if James and I partner on a deal, I'd say, James, if I'm going to be the realtor on this and I have to have staff that's answering the phone calls, we need to take 1% of our fee, but we're not going to charge 3%. So that 1% plus the 3% is 4% plus 2% in closing costs, and like title company closing costs. So when I said that earlier, I said, if you're a realtor, your closing costs are going to be around 6% because it's 3% for the other realtor that brings a buyer, 1% for you, and 2% more or less what the title fees are. Okay. So if you're not a realtor and one of your partners not a realtor, then expect that number to be 8%. So that's one of the figures we use. The other thing is you can look at a property, for example, the insurance, if you take the taxes on this, let's say the taxes on this are based on an assessed value of $350. Well, Texas, and I mean, you got to know your own, where you're buying it, and you got to factor this in, but 3% of say 350 is how much per year? It's going to be $9,000, about $10,000 a year, right? Is that right? 3% on 350. So it's about $10,000. I'm going to say $10,000 a year. So that's about $866 a month in taxes. So if I do 6 months of taxes, I'm paying for that. So 6 months times $866 is about $5,000, right? Okay, so I'm paying $5,000 in taxes alone. If I do, if I borrow money, let's say I'm borrowing money like from one of our lenders with our RIA. By the way, we have a RIA in San Antonio and Houston, and we got great sponsors. If we're borrowing the money from one of those guys, or if we're funding the money, we're going to charge, like if we're bringing the deal in, the cost of the money we figure is 1% per month. So if you take 350 times 1% per month, then and what is 1% of 350 is $350 a month in interest, right? Am I figuring that right?
350,000 times 1%.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Wouldn't that be 3,500? Because 10% would be 35.
Yeah, so the interest would be 35. So 10%. Yeah, I guess that would be right. So it's 1% per month. So 0.01 times. It's the amount of money you borrow. So it would be 210 plus about 50. So it would be say 250. So you're looking at $2,500 a month in interest cost. And if you multiply that times 6 months, well, that's about $20,000 in holding costs. I think we're figuring that wrong.
2,500 times 6. That's 15,000.
Yeah. So you got to figure that into your holding cost, and then you got minor things like utilities and stuff like that, and yard maintenance, and then occasionally you're going to have vandalism, right? It happens. It's not in these neighborhoods like this. It doesn't have. If you do it right, it very rarely have vandalism. If you're not paying attention, you very often will have vandalism. So you figure in all those numbers, and yeah, that's right, because 1% on 100,000 would be $1,000 a month. So that's your cost of interest on this. So you're going to pay $15,000 to $20,000. You add all those numbers up, and we use a spreadsheet for that. We've got a spreadsheet that we use. We'll plug those numbers in, and that gets our holding cost. So that gets us, I mean, just our holding cost on this deal is around $30,000 for 6 months, 30 to 35,000. Our sales cost is going to be another 35,000. So and that's a problem with big numbers. You're working big numbers. A lot of money's gone. A lot of money comes off the table. So we don't want, this is not something we want to sit around and dilly-dally with. We want to get this done.
Well, cool. So now that you have fried everybody's brains with all of this wonderful information tonight, let's talk about what we're doing this weekend.
Okay.
The 2-day workshop. And how, if you could go ahead and send that registration link in the comments and in the chat for those that are interested in it. You want to go ahead and tell them about it, Ray?
About what we're going to do Saturday and Sunday?
2-day, yeah.
So remember, our focus is to figure out how to make money and collect the check for a long time, right? There's got to be residual stuff that comes from this. So we're either going to rent or we're going to wrap or owner finance the properties when we sell every chance we get. Now, if somebody hasn't reached their financial freedom number, they could do this. They could do one of these deals a year, and this deal, and it's above normal deal, but it's also the numbers are higher. But this deal right here could fund somebody's lifestyle for a year. And then they can go out and buy 8 or 10 houses. We did the math, and we'll go through the math. We did the math that said if you would have bought 10 houses a year for retail, and see, a lot of people say, oh, you can't buy 10 houses without a huge deal machine and lead machine. But if you're paying retail, you can. Anybody can buy 10 houses a year if you're paying retail. We figured out in the last 2 years, if you'd have bought 10 houses each year, which is very doable, especially once you learn how to do it and you can make quick decisions. If you'd have bought 10 houses a year for the last 2 years, your net worth would have went up $1 million just by what happened in this market. And there's been people that are out there, they're buying and hustling. In fact, we've sold houses to people for retail who were investors, and they got it. They understood it, and they were right. And they were buying these things for $120,000. A year later, they're worth $130,000. And so you can make that happen. So we're going to talk about a little bit about the math, and we're going to go through 4 or 5 good case studies that talk about ways to do creative deals. And then we're going to talk about how to find these deals, how to reach out to people, how to get the leads. And then we're going to talk about how to get the money, because there's 4 or 5 ways we can get the money for these deals. And by the way, we want to talk also about highest and best use. Like, what is the highest and best use? And we really did, I think we did a good job on that today. We said, well, what is the highest and best use? And we're already telling you up front, we want to buy and hold, and this house is not probably a buy and hold property for us, right? So it's close, but it's probably not a buy and hold. So we want to look at these deals, weigh which way is the best way to go. Sometimes you get a deal and it's a perfect Airbnb deal. And even if you don't want to be an Airbnb operator, it might be that time to bring a partner in who is the Airbnb operator. You might get a deal. This has happened to us 3 times over the years where we did not, we were not in assisted living, but we found assisted living properties and we bought them because we knew how valuable they were to that market. And without going into a lot of detail, just because we're out of time, when you know what the value is to that market, then you can do all kinds of things. We can wholesale, and which we probably should put it in here. We can partner, we can rent, we can do those kinds of things because they have so much value. And think about it, on assisted living, it's not unusual for them to be making $4,000 to $6,000 per bedroom. So just imagine what an operator that's making that kind of money would pay for that perfect property. And they know the perfect property, but they don't have the lead machine or the deal machine or the wherewithal on knowing how to buy it. And that's where if we know what we're doing, we're going to show you how to buy it. We're going to show you how to recognize it when it happens. And then we're going to try to optimize the exit strategy by either partnering with those people or fixing it to upgrade to their needs. We did this, it was a couple of years ago now, but we had an operator that we had experience with. We bought a house that was ideal for assisted living, and then we upgraded the house to meet their needs. And then we sold it for retail plus 50%. And if you wouldn't have known that house was the perfect house, or you wouldn't have known how to reach out to those operators, you'd have probably passed on the deals because you probably wouldn't have paid what they were asking for. But it's because you didn't know what the highest and best use is. So we'll talk about those things. We'll talk about what does it take to have a successful rental. A lot of people don't know that. They'll get 4 or 5 rentals and they think they understand how to be a landlord. We'll talk about that because we've been landlords for 35 years. I mean, we've been rehabbers, landlords. We'll talk about how to put it all together and then how to find those deals and then how to find the money. And the devil's in the details. So we'll be doing that all day, Saturday and Sunday.
And you forgot 2 exciting things that we're doing in addition to that is Saturday night after the class or the workshop, it's 8:30 to 5 both days. So on Saturday evening, after 5 o'clock, we're going to go have dinner. Everybody that's there in person, we're going to go have dinner, and it'll be good, networking, good time to bring, some more questions, or if there's anything that you're actually working on, bring that there. And then Sunday morning, we're actually going to start off Sunday morning with a mastermind session. And, kind of the focus of that's going to be your business. So we can give you some actionable items that you can take and immediately implement in your real estate business immediately. And so we're going to start that off Sunday morning.
When we started doing that mastermind session like that, I'm a closet introvert. And a lot of people will say, no, there's no way you're an introvert. But if you're an introvert, you can be an introvert and still be willing to talk in front of people. But when we did that mastermind session, the first time I did it, Linda made me do it, and I didn't want to do it. And I did it, and it amazed me how a person can have a situation and they're like 80% there or 95% there, and they got 1 or 2 thoughts that are just backwards, upside down, inverted, and it stops them, it freezes them and paralyzes them. And when it's you that has that issue, you don't know what to do. And when you get it out there and you start talking about it, then you start examining it. It's just amazing how oftentimes these things that have been stopping you for 5 years or 7 years or 10 years, it's just making it 1 or 2 tweaks. We made $100,000. I was thinking about this on the way. It wasn't related to this. We made $100,000 for a guy and a deal. And it's like, it took me probably 30 minutes to figure out, for him to explain to me what the problem was. And I said, well, this is the market. This is how you do this. I've done it before. And when I told him that, it gave him the confidence to follow through on that. He did it. He made $100,000 extra than what he would have made. He was literally going to give up and walk away from it. And I'm not trying to brag, but I'm just saying sometimes you get locked into a thing and you have somebody with a lot of experience, or a couple of somebodies with a lot of experience. They can kind of get you back on track. They can give you the confidence to follow through on a couple little slightly different things. And next thing you know, you made it, and you made that difference. And what's that worth to people? And you'll be surprised. I mean, you'll be surprised how in life you have a certain idea and thoughts about the way things are done, and you get to a natural level and you don't go beyond that level. And if somebody says, hey, it's really easy to just break through that glass ceiling, you just got to do this and this and this. And if you trust them and you have that confidence, you're going to try it. And next thing you know, boom, it worked. And that happens more often than not in a mastermind session. That's what it's all about. So they're very, very important, very valuable. In fact, the day after the foreclosure deal, we're going to Tampa, and it's a mastermind session. with 14 other groups, right? And you and Brandon are going with me. There's going to be about 20 other people there, 25 other people. And it's 3 days of just masterminding on how to overcome things that stop normal people who don't reach outside of who they are, right? And don't be that people. Don't be that person who puts those barriers there and don't know and doesn't try to break through them. And don't try to break through them on your own. Get around other people who are coming up with solutions on a regular basis, and you'll be surprised how you can break through those barriers.
So hopefully we see you there this weekend. All the information, Hal did put the link in the chat and in the comments. So check it out. It's only $249 to spend the weekend with us, go to dinner. And then we're also going to be including in that a 1-year membership to Alamo Ria, or if you're already a member, we'll extend your membership another year. So that's all I really have. I wanted to make sure that, you got that, and hopefully we see you there this weekend. Is there anything else you want to close us out with, Ray?
No, just playing on my computer.
Sounds like we need to get you like an art set for your birthday this year.
Hey, my granddaughter comes over here often, and somebody had this great idea of giving her colored markers, and that's probably only going to cost us a $4,000 paint job. So don't say colored pencils around me.
Well, if anybody knows how to get that done and get it done cheaper, you're the expert on that.
I'm the guy.
You're the guy.
I'm Don Barato.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Ray. Great show again tonight. I enjoyed it. And again, we look forward to seeing you this weekend. You don't want to miss out on that. And I'm
James,
speaking.
Thank you for being nice to me. And Hal, thank you for making this happen as you always do. And it's almost always flawless. So Hal's wonderful. He's one of our sponsors, vendors. He does tech support for anybody that's trying to make their computer run right and their programs run right. So thank you, Hal. We really appreciate what you do.
Hal is a lifesaver. Yes. So on that note, we are out, and we will see you later on.